The hotel bar had that nostalgic haze of cigarette smoke and cheap cologne, the kind that made you feel like you'd stepped back into 2009. The high school reunion was in full swing. People swapping stories, laughing too loud, clinking glasses like we hadn't all aged into mortgage-paying, back-aching adults. Rachel looked stunning, as always. My wife had a way of turning heads without even trying, and tonight was no different. She wore a dark green dress that hugged her in all the right places, her hair in loose waves down her back. She was the kind of woman who made you proud just standing next to her. I'd always known I hit the jackpot when I married Rachel. Back in college, she was the girl everyone wanted but no one could keep. I still remember the first time I saw her, bright-eyed, laughing at something Ryan had said. Yeah, that Ryan. My best friend back in the day, now just another face in the crowd. I spotted him across the bar, leaning against a table, drink in hand. He still had that easy confidence, the same cocky smirk that made girls fall over themselves back in college. When he caught my eye, he raised his glass in a silent toast, and I nodded back, the past flickering between us. Rachel and I hadn't talked much about Ryan over the years. There wasn't much reason to. He had drifted after college, moving out west, chasing some big-shot finance career. We kept in touch for a while, but life happened, and before I knew it, a decade had passed since I last saw him in person. But tonight he was back, and Rachel noticed. She tried to play it cool, but I caught the way her eyes lingered a little too long when she saw him. The slight hitch in her breath when he came over to say hello. "Ryan," she said, her voice smooth, like she was sipping his name. "I can't believe you actually showed up." "I wouldn't miss it," he said, flashing that grin. "Not every day you get to relive the glory days." I chuckled, slapping him on the back.
"Yeah, man.
Feels like just yesterday we were cramming for finals and blowing our savings on bad tequila." He laughed, but his eyes never left Rachel. The night wore on, drinks flowed, and memories surfaced. I watched Rachel with Ryan, how easily they fell back into conversation. It wasn't jealousy, not at first. It was just weird, like watching an old movie where you already know the ending, but you can't remember how it gets there. By midnight, the reunion had thinned out, people stumbling back to their rooms or heading home. Rachel had been drinking more than usual, her laugh a little looser, her touch a little freer. "We should head up," I murmured, placing a hand on the small of her back. "It's late." She hesitated, just for a second, but I caught it. "You go ahead," she said, pressing a quick kiss to my cheek. "I'm just gonna grab another drink with Ryan. Catch up a little." I didn't want to be that guy, the overbearing husband, the buzzkill, so I forced a smile, nodded. "All right, don't be too long." She just smiled, and something about it sent a flicker of unease down my spine. I headed upstairs, shaking it off. It was nothing, just old friends reminiscing. But when I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't quite right, and I had no idea how right I was. The room felt too quiet without Rachel. I stared at the ceiling, trying to shake off the unease creeping up my spine. I wasn't the jealous type, never had been. Rachel was beautiful, charming, the kind of woman who turned heads just by walking into a room. I had always known other guys noticed her, but she had chosen me. That was enough. But tonight, something felt off. I glanced at my phone.
12:47 nachts.
I told myself she was just reminiscing, probably caught up in old stories, maybe even giving Ryan a hard time about some dumb thing he did back in college. But as the minutes dragged on, doubt crawled its way into my chest. 15 more minutes passed, then 20, then 30. By 1:15 a.m., I was done waiting. I grabbed my keycard, shoved on my shoes, and stepped into the hallway. The hotel was quiet now, the remnants of the reunion scattered. Half-empty wine glasses on hallway tables, discarded high heels abandoned near elevators. I made my way down to the bar. Empty. The bartender was wiping down glasses, looking half asleep. "Last call was a while ago," he said, barely glancing at me. "Most people cleared out. You see a woman, dark hair, green dress?" She was with a guy. Tall, kinda smug-looking. He furrowed his brows. Oh yeah, them. Left a little while ago. My stomach clenched. Together. Yeah. He smirked. She was real friendly with him. I forced out a chuckle like it didn't matter. Like it didn't feel like my stomach was tying itself into knots. Did you see where they went? He shrugged, guessing back to the rooms. They took the elevator up. The walls suddenly felt too close. The air too thick. I turned and walked toward the elevators, my mind racing. Maybe Ryan had walked her to the door. Maybe they were just talking. Maybe, but I knew better. I always trusted Rachel. But trust is a funny thing. It's solid until it isn't. Until one little crack forms, and then everything starts to shatter. The elevator doors slid open, and I stepped inside. The numbers glowed as they climbed. 5th floor. Our floor. When I stepped out into the hallway, my heart was hammering so hard I swore I could hear it in my ears. I walked past our room. Empty, just as I left it. Then I saw it. Room 514. The door wasn't fully closed, just slightly ajar. A sliver of dim light spilled into the hallway. I don't know what made me stop, what made me listen. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was some twisted part of me that already knew what I was about to hear but needed to prove it. And then I did. A laugh. Rachel's laugh. Soft, breathy. Followed by his voice. Low. Murmuring. Words I couldn't quite make out, but I felt them. I should have walked away. Should have turned back. Should have given her the benefit of the doubt. But I didn't. I pushed the door open. And there she was. Rachel. My wife. Straddling my best friend. Her hands tangled in his hair. His mouth on her neck. I felt the ground beneath me tilt. The blood in my veins turned ice cold. Rachel gasped, scrambling off him, her eyes wide, lips swollen. Ethan. Ryan just sat there, smirking.
No guilt, no shame.
Just satisfaction. Like he wanted me to see this. I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. Rachel reached for me, but I stepped back like her touch would burn me. Ethan, don't. My voice was barely above a whisper. She looked panicked. It's not what it looks like. I laughed. Actually laughed. A sharp, humorless sound. Not what it looks like? I gestured between them. So what, Rachel? You just tripped and landed on his lap. She flinched. Ryan finally spoke. Maybe you should calm down, man. I turned on him, rage igniting in my chest. You don't get to talk. He leaned back on the bed like he had all the time in the world. Why not? It's been a long time coming. Don't you think? Rachel's head snapped toward him. Ryan, shut up. But he didn't. He stood up, adjusting his shirt like nothing had happened, stepping toward me with that same arrogant smirk. You know, he said, voice calm, too calm. I always wondered how long it'd take for you to figure out you never really had her. I clenched my fists so hard my nails bit into my palms. What the hell does that mean? Ryan shrugged. You were the nice guy, the safe bet. But let's be honest, Ethan. You were always just filler. I saw red. My fist flew before I even realized what I was doing. It connected with Ryan's jaw, the sickening crack of impact vibrating through my arm. He staggered back, laughing. Rachel screamed. Ethan, stop. But I wasn't listening. Ryan wiped his lip, where blood was already trickling down his chin. He grinned. That's the best you got? I was ready to hit him again. Ready to put him through the damn wall. But then he said it. The thing that made everything spiral into something so much worse. This wasn't just a one-time thing, Ryan murmured. This wasn't even about her. Rachel turned pale. Ryan, don't. He ignored her, staring right at me, like this moment, this destruction, was something he'd been waiting for. This was about you. And just like that, the world cracked wide open. I stood there, fists clenched, my pulse pounding so hard I could feel it in my teeth. Rachel was frozen, her face twisted with shock and something else. Fear. But Ryan, that smug bastard, just grinned, licking the blood from his split lip like he'd been waiting for this moment. This wasn't about her, he repeated, voice smooth, calculated. This was about you, Ethan. I should have hit him again. Should have grabbed him by the collar and driven my fist into his face until that smirk was nothing but a memory. But his words had sunk their hooks into me. My mind was reeling, searching for something, anything, to make sense of this. Rachel grabbed my arm, her grip shaky. Ethan, let's just talk. Okay? Talk. I laughed. A hollow, humorless sound. Talk about what? Rachel? That you were screwing my best friend in a damn hotel room? Or do you want to talk about this? I pointed at Ryan. And whatever the hell he just said? Her mouth opened, then closed. She didn't have an answer. Ryan exhaled, rubbing his jaw like he was bored of all this already. You always thought you had it all, didn't you? I turned back to him, jaw tight. What the hell are you talking about? He chuckled. Perfect wife. Perfect marriage. Perfect little life. Meanwhile, I was watching from the sidelines, waiting, because I knew Ethan. I knew you were living on borrowed time. My skin went cold. Ryan, Rachel started, stepping toward him. Don't. But Ryan ignored her. His eyes locked onto mine, and in that moment, I saw something there, rage. Not the fiery, reckless kind. No, this was something worse. Something patient. Did you ever wonder, Ethan? He said, tilting his head. Ever think back to college? To how it all started? I swallowed hard, my mind racing. Back to college. Back to when Rachel and I first got together. Back to when Ryan and Rachel had been a thing. Just a casual fling, nothing serious, or so I had thought. Back then, Rachel and I had always had chemistry, but she was still caught up with Ryan. I never thought I had a real shot until she chose me. She chose me. Ryan stepped closer, his voice low. You think she chose you? His lips curled into a sneer. She settled for you. Rachel flinched like she'd been slapped. Ryan, stop. You stole her from me, Ethan, he said, his tone dripping with venom. And I let you think you won. I shook my head, my breath coming fast. That's not true. Ryan's smirk widened. Isn't it? He turned to Rachel, eyes burning into her. Tell him, Ratch. She stiffened. I looked at her, searching her face, begging for her to tell me it wasn't true, that this was just Ryan being the manipulative asshole he always was. But she said nothing. Silence. Thick, suffocating. And then I knew. My knees felt weak. Rachel. My voice cracked. Tell me he's lying. Tears welled in her eyes. Her hands trembled. Ethan. Ryan laughed. Oh, this is beautiful. My stomach twisted. How long? Rachel's breath hitched. Ethan, How long, Rachel? I roared. She let out a strangled sob, covering her mouth with her hands. Ryan exhaled, shaking his head. 6 years. My world tilted. 6 fucking years. My chest felt like it was caving in. I turned away, hands on my head, trying to breathe, trying to think. But everything was spinning. Every moment in my marriage suddenly tainted. Ryan clapped a hand on my shoulder, and I nearly snapped his wrist. Don't look so surprised, man, he said, voice mocking. You had to know. Deep down. She was mine first. Something inside me snapped. I lunged. My fist connected with his face again. Harder this time. Ryan stumbled back, knocking over a lamp, the crash echoing through the room. Rachel screamed. Ethan, stop. But I wasn't done. Ryan grinned up at me, blood smeared across his teeth. That all you got? I grabbed him by the collar, dragging him up. You smug piece of shit. Then the door burst open. 2 men in security uniforms stormed in, eyes wide at the scene before them. Me, panting with my fist raised, Ryan half smiling like he wanted them to see this, and Rachel crying in the corner. Sir, step away. One of the guards ordered, hand hovering near his radio. Ryan wiped his mouth with the back of his hand, winking at me. We're good, fellas. Just a misunderstanding between old friends. The guards exchanged looks, clearly unsure whether to intervene or not. Rachel's voice was small. Please, just go, Ethan. Go. Like I was the problem. Like I was the intruder in my own marriage. I let out a hollow laugh, stepping back. My hands were still shaking, my entire body thrumming with rage and something even worse, betrayal. I looked at Rachel one last time. Her eyes were pleading. I never wanted you to find out like this. I shook my head, my voice barely above a whisper. I don't even know who you are. Then I walked out, and just like that, the life I thought I had was gone. I don't remember walking back to my hotel room. 1 second, I was in that room, watching my wife plead, watching Ryan smirk, watching my world burn to the ground. The next, I was standing outside my own door, keycard in hand, staring at the number like I didn't recognize it. 6 years. That number rattled around in my skull, bouncing off the walls of my brain like a bullet in a steel chamber. I slid the keycard into the lock, the little green light flashing like it had no idea my life had just imploded. The second I stepped inside, I let it all out. I roared. Fucking roared. The bedside lamp was the first to go, shattered against the far wall. Then the minibar, its tiny bottles exploding in a mess of glass and liquor. I wanted to destroy everything, because everything felt destroyed, but none of it made me feel any better. I collapsed onto the bed, chest heaving, hands still shaking. 6 fucking years. Not a one-time mistake. Not a drunken regret. A full-blown affair. I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to breathe, but all I could see was them. The way she had been comfortable in his lap. The way he had smirked so goddamn confident like he had already won. Had this been the plan all along? Had she ever really been mine? A knock on the door ripped me from my thoughts. For a split second I hoped it was Rachel here to explain, to tell me Ryan was lying, that this was all some kind of sick joke. But it wasn't her. It was him. Ryan stood there, ice pack pressed to his jaw, smirk still firmly in place. I didn't even hesitate. I slammed the door in his face. He laughed. A slow, infuriating chuckle from the other side.
Small man.
Let's talk. I clenched my fists so tight I thought I might snap my own bones. Get the fuck away from my door, Ryan. Ethan. His voice was patient, amused. You don't get it yet, do you? I yanked the door open, stepping so close to him our noses almost touched. Get the fuck away. Ryan just exhaled, shaking his head. You think this is just an affair? Some mistake? Jesus, Ethan, you really don't see it. I wanted to hit him again. More than anything, I wanted to lay him out, to break his goddamn face so he could never smirk at me again. But I needed answers. I needed to know why. I let out a slow breath, forcing my voice to stay level. Then tell me, Ryan, since you're so goddamn eager to rub this in my face. Why? Why her? Why this? He tilted his head. Why her? He laughed, shaking his head. You really still think this is about Rachel? My blood ran cold. He leaned in, lowering his voice. This was never about her. This was about you. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to keep still, to not let him see the panic clawing up my throat. Explain. Ryan smiled like he had been waiting years to finally tell me. You stole her from me, Ethan, he said. You walked into college all fresh-faced and decent, and you took her. And the worst part, he stepped even closer, voice like poison. You didn't even realize it. I stared at him, barely breathing. You never saw the way she looked at me before you came along. You never saw how I had her first. He exhaled, shaking his head like he was disappointed in me. You were the good guy, the one parents loved, the one she could bring home without worrying. And I hated you for it. I clenched my jaw so hard it ached. So what? I spat. You spent the last 6 years screwing my wife just to get back at me? He smirked.
No.
I spent 6 years making sure you lost. Making sure you finally saw what you really are. I breathed in through my nose, willing my hands to stay at my sides. And what's that? Ryan's smirk deepened. A second choice. My entire body went stiff. You were never the first option, Ethan, he murmured, voice almost gentle. You were just easier. She settled for you because you were the safe bet, because she didn't trust me not to break her heart. And I let her do it. I let you have your little marriage. Because I knew that one day she'd come back. I don't know what broke first, my control or my mind. But the next thing I knew, I had him against the wall. Fist cocked, breathing like a goddamn animal. Ryan didn't flinch, didn't blink. Go ahead, he murmured. Hit me again. It won't change the fact that she was never yours. I let him go, because killing him would have been too easy. Because, as much as I wanted to believe he was just screwing with me, there was something in Rachel's face tonight, something in her silence, that told me everything I needed to know. He was right. Ryan fixed his shirt, rolling his shoulders. You should thank me, man. You got 6 years of playing pretend. Most guys don't even get that. I stared at him, chest heaving. You think this is over? He grinned.
No.
I think this is just getting started. Then he walked away, and I stood there, drowning in the wreckage of my marriage, knowing, without a doubt, that he wasn't done with me yet. I didn't sleep. I spent the rest of the night pacing my hotel room, the anger burning through me like acid. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw them. Rachel's lips on his, Ryan's smug grin, the way he whispered those words that shattered everything I thought I knew. She was never yours. The worst part? I was starting to believe it. By the time the sun started creeping through the curtains, I had made up my mind. I needed answers, and I wasn't leaving this town until I had every single one. Rachel still hadn't called. She knew where I was, knew she'd been caught. But no apology, no explanation. Nothing. Coward. I threw on the first clothes I could find, grabbed my phone, and left the room. I needed coffee, and I needed a plan. The hotel lobby was nearly empty, just a few people checking out. I made my way to the cafe in the corner, ordered black coffee, and tried to ignore the dull throb in my knuckles from where I had punched Ryan. I was stirring my coffee when my phone vibrated. Rachel. I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the answer button. Then I hit decline. She doesn't get to control the conversation anymore. A few seconds later, a text popped up. Rachel, Ethan, please, just talk to me. I turned my phone over and kept drinking. Let her sit in her guilt. I was halfway through my coffee when someone slid into the seat across from me. I looked up, expecting Rachel. It wasn't. It was Mark Tanner. Ryan and I had known Mark in college, one of our mutual friends back in the day. He was always the quiet one, the guy who showed up to parties but never drank too much, never got in trouble. I hadn't seen him in years. He looked at me, then let out a low whistle. Jesus, Ethan. You look like shit. I smirked, sipping my coffee. Not in the mood for small talk, Mark. I figured, he said, leaning forward. That's why I came over. I narrowed my eyes. You heard. Everybody heard. Mark exhaled. I was at the bar last night. I saw you leave, saw Ryan follow. And well, he tapped his phone. Let's just say word spreads fast in this town. Great. Just what I needed. My humiliation going public. Mark hesitated, then said, Look, man, I think there's something you need to know about Ryan. I barked out a bitter laugh. What, that he's a snake? Already figured that one out. No, Mark's expression darkened. It's worse. I set my cup down, suddenly paying full attention. Mark rubbed his jaw. Ryan, he didn't just want Rachel back. This wasn't just an affair, Ethan. This was a setup. I felt the blood drain from my face. What the hell are you talking about? Mark leaned in, voice dropping. I've known for a while that Ryan never got over what happened in college. He never let that shit go. And when he moved back a couple of years ago, he started talking about you again. A lot. Why? Because he wanted to ruin you. I exhaled sharply, shaking my head. That's insane. Mark just gave me a look. Is it? Think about it, Ethan. Think about how long this has been going on. 6 years. You think this just happened? No, man. Ryan planned this. He waited. He played the long game. And when Rachel finally caved, he made sure it kept happening. I gritted my teeth. Why? Mark leaned back. Because in his mind, you stole Rachel from him. And this was his way of taking something from you. But he didn't just want to sleep with your wife, Ethan. He wanted to destroy your entire life. My stomach twisted. I thought back to Ryan's words, the way he had wanted me to see them together. The way he had smirked, as if this was the goal all along. And suddenly it all made sense. It wasn't just an affair. It was revenge. Calculated. Premeditated. 6 years of betrayal, just so he could watch me break. I sat back, exhaling hard.
Jesus Christ.
Mark nodded grimly. Yeah, that's about the right reaction. For a long moment, I just stared at the table, my mind spinning. Then slowly I straightened. All right, I muttered. Then it's my turn. Mark frowned. Your turn for what? I met his gaze, something dark and sharp settling in my chest. My turn to destroy him. Mark hesitated. Ethan, listen. No, I cut in. I've been listening. I've been reacting. I've been letting them win. But not anymore. Mark sighed. And what exactly are you planning to do? I gave him a slow, cold smile. I'm going to take everything from him. Mark exhaled, rubbing his temples. Shit. Okay. You need to be smart about this. Oh, I will be, I said darkly. Ryan thinks he's the only one who can play the long game. He's about to learn the hard way that I never lose. Mark stared at me for a long moment. Then finally he smirked. Well, he muttered, standing up. This just got interesting. I finished my coffee, set the cup down, and picked up my phone. Rachel had sent 3 more texts. Rachel, Ethan, please. Rachel. I just want to explain. Rachel. Can we meet? Just for a little bit? I smiled to myself. Let her sweat. Because now, I had bigger things to focus on. And Ryan had no idea what was coming for him. If Ryan wanted a war, he just got one. I left the hotel with my mind razor sharp, my anger cold and controlled. No more shouting. No more fists flying in blind rage. I wasn't going to waste my energy throwing punches when I could hit him somewhere that actually mattered. I was going to dismantle Ryan piece by piece. But first, I needed more information. I scrolled through my phone, tapping on the one contact who could help me fast-track this. Chris O'Malley. Chris had been one of my closest friends in college, but unlike Ryan, he wasn't a backstabbing prick. The guy had gone into private investigations after school, working corporate cases and high-end divorces. If there was dirt to be found on Ryan, Chris would dig it up. The phone barely rang once before he picked up. Ethan? His voice was laced with curiosity.
Shit, man.
Been a while. Yeah, I muttered. I wish I was calling to catch up. But I need a favor. A pause. Then, who do I need to ruin? I exhaled. Ryan Carter. Chris whistled low. That a name I should remember? He was my best friend in college. Chris chuckled darkly. Was being the key word, huh? Yeah. Long story short, he's been screwing my wife for 6 years. Silence. Then Chris let out a long breath.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, and I need everything you can find on him. I don't care how deep you have to dig. There was no hesitation. Consider it done. Also, I added, if you can look into Rachel, too. I need to know if there's more I don't know yet. Chris sighed.
Damn, man.
I got you. Give me 24 hours. Thanks, Chris. Don't thank me yet. You might not like what I find. I hung up, shoving my phone in my pocket. I had spent the last 12 hours drowning in betrayal. But now, I felt nothing but focus. I had a few hours to kill before Chris got back to me. So I decided to do something I should have done a long time ago. I went to see Rachel's parents. Rachel's parents lived just outside town in a big, polished house. The kind that screamed old money. They had never particularly liked me, but they tolerated me because Rachel chose me. I rang the doorbell. Rachel's mother, Linda, answered, her eyebrows lifting in surprise. Ethan. Mrs. Carter. I greeted, voice steady. Can I come in? She hesitated, then stepped aside. Of course. Inside, the house smelled of fresh coffee and expensive perfume. I heard footsteps, and then Rachel's father, William, walked in, his face pinched. Ethan, he said, voice carefully neutral. Rachel's not here. I let out a humorless chuckle. Yeah, I know. That's actually why I'm here. I sat down in their pristine white living room, resting my elbows on my knees. I assume you've already heard. Linda sat across from me, looking uncomfortable. Rachel called this morning, she admitted. Of course she did. Probably to get ahead of the story, paint herself as the victim. What did she tell you? I asked, keeping my tone calm. William sighed. She said you had a misunderstanding last night. I barked out a laugh. A misunderstanding? Is that what we're calling 6 years of cheating now? Linda flinched. Ethan. No. I cut in, looking between them. I'm not here to ask for sympathy. I'm here to ask a simple question. I leaned forward. Did you know? Silence. A long, dragging silence. Linda looked down, wringing her hands. William let out a slow breath. I suspected, he finally admitted. Something inside me snapped. Are you kidding me? William met my glare. I never had proof, Ethan. But I knew Rachel and Ryan had history. And when he came back into town a few years ago, I noticed things. Her absences. The way she got defensive when I asked about you. I gritted my teeth. And you never thought to tell me? What was I supposed to say? William countered. That I had a feeling? Would you have believed me without proof? I stared at him, my pulse hammering. And the worst part? He was probably right. I would have never believed it. Rachel had me so convinced. Linda cleared her throat, her voice shaky. Ethan, Rachel made a mistake. I snapped my gaze to her. A mistake is a one-time thing. This was a choice. Over and over again. She shut her mouth, looking away. I stood, straightening my jacket. Thanks for your honesty. A little late, but thanks. I turned to leave, but William's voice stopped me. Ethan. I glanced back. There was something unreadable in his expression. Whatever you're planning to do next, he said. Make sure it's worth it. I gave him a cold smile. Oh, trust me. It will be. I drove back to the hotel, my blood still boiling. I had just stepped into my room when my phone rang again. Chris. I answered immediately. Tell me you've got something. Oh, I've got plenty, he said, his voice darkly amused. You were right. This isn't just an affair. Ryan's got some serious skeletons in his closet. I grabbed a notepad. Start talking. Chris chuckled. Let's start with the obvious. He's broke. Like seriously broke. Guy's been bleeding money for years, made some bad investments, and guess what? He took out a loan from a guy you don't take loans from. I frowned. Who? Name's Vincent Lazaro, Chris said. Small-time loan shark. Works under bigger guys. Ryan's in deep. That got my attention. How deep? Let's just say if he doesn't pay up soon, his kneecaps are going to be having a bad day. I sat back, a slow grin spreading across my face. Oh, this was perfect. Ryan thought he could ruin my life? He had no idea I was about to flip the script. Chris continued. There's more, but I figured this would interest you first. I exhaled sharply. Chris. Yeah. How hard would it be to make sure Lazaro gets the right information about Ryan's financial situation? Chris let out a low chuckle. Oh, I like where this is going. I smiled, feeling something I hadn't felt since last night. Satisfaction. Ryan wanted to take everything from me? Fine. Now it was my turn. And I wasn't just going to ruin his life. I was going to make sure he never recovered. Ryan had no idea what was coming for him. By the time I was done, he'd regret every second of the last 6 years. Chris worked fast. Within hours, he had fed Vincent Lazaro's people just the right amount of intel. Nothing too obvious, just enough to make sure Ryan's debts suddenly became urgent. I didn't need to do anything else. Loan sharks don't send friendly reminders. And that was just the beginning. Next, I called in another favor from my buddy Greg, a real estate lawyer who had helped me close on our house years ago. You sure about this, Ethan? He asked, voice cautious. Divorces get ugly. I smirked. Oh, it's already ugly. All right, send over what you've got. I'll make sure she walks away with nothing. Rachel was about to learn that betrayal had real consequences. And then, I went for the kill shot. I leaked every single disgusting detail of Ryan's financial ruin, his debts, his manipulations, to his boss. Chris had dug up enough dirt to prove that Ryan had been siphoning money out of company accounts to cover his personal losses. I didn't have to do much, just forwarded the evidence anonymously. Less than an hour later, Ryan's career was done. By the time I was finished, Ryan wouldn't just lose me. He'd lose his job, his reputation, and the last shreds of whatever pathetic future he thought he had. But the best part? He still had no idea it was coming. I didn't have to go looking for Ryan. He came to me. I was back at the hotel bar, sipping whiskey, when I heard the heavy footsteps behind me. The moment I turned, I saw him, storming in, looking pissed. His lip was still busted from when I hit him, and his usual arrogance was replaced with something else. Desperation. I smiled. Perfect. You think you're clever, huh? Ryan spat, shoving a chair out of his way as he approached me. I tilted my glass, taking a slow sip. What's the matter, Ryan? Bad day? His jaw clenched. You did this. I raised an eyebrow. Did what? You think I don't know? My boss just called.
I'm fired.
My accounts are frozen. And oh yeah, Vincent's guys showed up at my place. His face twisted in barely contained rage. They're giving me 48 hours before they start breaking bones. I smiled wider. Sounds serious. Ryan slammed his fists on the table, eyes burning with fury. What the fuck did you do? I leaned forward, my voice calm, measured. I did what you did, Ryan. I gestured between us. I took my time. I played the long game. And now, I made sure you lost. He stared at me, breathing hard. You think this makes us even? He finally said, voice low. I laughed. Oh, Ryan. Even?
No, no.
This isn't revenge. This is justice. He leaned in closer, voice shaking. You really think Rachel's gonna stay with me after this? I smirked. Oh, I'm counting on it. Because now, she was all he had left. And when everything came crashing down, when the money was gone, when the walls closed in, she'd see him for what he really was. A mistake. Ryan's face twitched. He knew it too. I should kill you, he muttered. I chuckled. Try it. See how that works out for you. For the first time in his pathetic life, Ryan didn't have a comeback. And I savored every second of it. I stood, finished my drink, and patted him on the shoulder. Enjoy rock bottom, Ryan. Then I walked away. For the first time in 6 years, I was finally free. I didn't go back to the hotel room. I didn't need to. Rachel had been blowing up my phone for hours, calls, texts, voicemails. All of them some variation of, Ethan, please, just talk to me. I never replied. Instead, I sent one text. Me. The divorce papers will be on your desk by morning. Don't bother fighting it. You get nothing. And then, I blocked her. Let her sit in the wreckage. Let her realize that after 6 years of playing me for a fool, she had lost the only thing she had left, her comfortable life. Ryan was ruined. Rachel was alone. And me? I walked away free. For the first time in years, I was done. I checked out of the hotel, stepped into the crisp morning air, and smiled. Because revenge wasn't just sweet. It was permanent.